Welcome back, folks. This is actually part 2 of my HDR video and audio advanced settings for the Sony X900F TV. My first video didn't work out too well. Somehow got corrupted, and only like the last quarter of the video I actually uploaded with no audio. Even though that one has the details in the description, I'm just going to do this video to actually show you what those details mean in better way. So first off, I'm going to split this into 3 sections. First one's going to be audio, universal audio settings for ARC and eARC. Also, I'm going to show you some settings on how to enable HDMI 2.0B. And last will be the picture. If you're just concerned with the picture, I'll put a timestamp in the description. So you can just fast forward to that timestamp itself and watch the video settings if you don't care about the audio itself. But I do recommend you look at the section for enabling HDMI 2.0B if you're trying to run HDMI input for 4K HDR at 60 Hz. Anyways, let's get started. So first off, all my settings, I'm going to do them on the HDMI 1 because I don't use that input. As you can see there, I'm on HDMI 1. So universal audio settings will be here. I say universal means for all inputs and all devices and apps. Currently set to TV speakers at the top right, if you can see that there. All these settings you can change at will if you need to. Now if you have a receiver or an older soundbar that uses eARC, audio return channel, this is what I'm going to show you what setting to put on. Now, as you can see right now, it says TV speakers on the top right. When I turn on my receiver, you'll see this message at the very bottom of the screen. Just a reminder, I have an older 2011 Pioneer VSX receiver. Now my receiver is on. If I go back to the universal audio settings, you'll see there now, top right says audio system. Now the difference now is if you look towards the bottom, I now have an option to change Dolby Digital Plus output. If you are using eARC, Enhanced Audio Return Channel, use Dolby Digital Plus. If you do not, if your sound system does not support that, only support ARC, or if you're using optical cable output from the TV, use Dolby Digital. You're going to have some static or no audio coming out if you pick Dolby Digital Plus. Now this automatically changes when you turn on and off the receiver. So now I'm going to turn the receiver off. And now the audio is back to TV speakers. So if I go back to the home audio settings for universal audio output, you see it says TV speakers. And there's no option for Dolby Digital Plus at the bottom. Now we're going to go over another section, which is enabling HDMI 2.0B. Now I'm not going to go detail now, I'm going to go into more later, but if you go into here, watching TV, external inputs, HDMI signal format, we're now having a standard. If you hit the bottom one, enhanced format, that's what enables eARC as well for audio, and also enables HDMI 2.0B to run 4K HDR at 60 Hz for HDMI inputs. This does not affect your internal TV apps, the YouTube, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max, so on and so on. Again, I'm going to go more detail how that looks and works later on. Now I'm going to go into the picture settings. First off, I'm going to go into here, which is the picture settings for HDMI 1. Now, I'm going to show you here picture mode. The first setting, standard, which is, it's the standard setting for all the TV when you first purchase it. That setting, gives you 120 Hz at with Motionflow. So what that does is increases the frame rate 24 frames per second for movies and most TV to 120 frames or same thing with the gaming console. If you're playing at 30 or 60 frames per second, it'll boost it up to 120. Now that does cause a soap opera effect. I'm going to show you where to actually turn that off. Oh, by the way, if you don't want to mess with those settings, you can just go down here to Cinema Pro. That changes your video settings to 24 frames per second to match films. Not necessarily TV shows, but films that are normally filmed at 24 frames a second. If you don't like that, you can also choose game. That turns off Motionflow, soap opera effect completely off. And also the graphics picture mode does the same thing. Right now, let's go back to standard. Now if I go down to advanced settings, this is where the advanced settings are going to go through. Here's your motion flow. If you want to manually turn on and off yourself. If you choose smooth, that's what really creates a lot of soap opera effect. What that does is that actually still is 120 hertz, but it actually copies the image from frame 1 to frame 2 and blurs them together to make a third frame. It's kind of called interloping. It looks real smooth, hence the word smooth. Great for probably sports, but other than that, I highly don't recommend it. Standard just repeats the frame rate. So if you're running something at 60 hertz and the standard is 120 hertz, the first frame will be double. So it'll be double the image, making it much more crisper, but you still get slightly soap opera effect. Clear, it does the same thing, 120 hertz frames a second, but what it does, it inserts a black image between every other frame. So frame 1 is the normal image, frame 2 is black, which is why it's darker. I only recommend that setting if you actually are very sensitive to light, or you actually just watch TV a lot during nighttime and don't want it too bright. True Cinema is what most people would like to have, and it'll be 24 frames a second. That'll match your normal films, any films, except for The Hobbit, which is 48 frames per second. Custom is just custom made, and off is you turn off the whole motion flow soap opera effect completely off. This is great if you game a lot and you don't want any latency or frame rate issues. Again, I'll leave it on standard for now. Video options, HDR. Leave that auto. By selecting a specific HDR, you're actually going to affect the color of the picture itself manually if it doesn't support it, because you're trying to force it, especially if it's SD content. Okay, last but not least, now I'm going to go over the HDR settings itself, how to actually adjust them. How to actually, if you want to specifically adjust color, brightness, and other options as contrast for your apps, internal apps, or HDMI input, you actually have to do it per app and HDR. I'm sorry, not per app, per input, which is HDMI 1, and per HDR or non-HDR content. Let me explain better. Okay, now let me show you HDMI 1. Right now I have it set to brightness 35, right? Let's just put it down to 30. Okay, now let's go to the apps, and we're gonna watch a Dolby Vision Dolby Vision film. Okay, I have HBO Max loaded up, and I'm gonna show you first of all a Dolby Vision film. Again, we're still on HDMI 1. See there, it says Dolby Vision. If you see the fine print on the left side, and we're gonna go ahead and remember, if I show you again before I load the movie. Oh yeah, you have to adjust the brightness when you install the apps as well. So the setting I first initially made was for the HDMI 1 only. When you open any internal app, video app, then it'll allow you to adjust color, brightness, contrast, and other settings, advanced settings per for all the apps for non-HDR content. So right now it's set to 32 on this one. So if I play the movie, you have to wait to play the movie to make adjustments. You can make it as soon as the movie starts. Okay, I'm gonna go back to picture settings. Now remember, brightness was at 32. Look at that. Brightness is at max, color is different. Why? If you look at the top right, it says HDR. Just because I changed the picture settings on the app itself, it does not change it does not keep those settings when you're actually watching a film in Dolby Vision or HDR10. So just to prove that, here we go. We're going to change this max brightness to 45. Okay. Alright, let's leave the film. We're back on the app. Go to picture settings. Look at that, 32. Because it's non-HDR. It's not Dolby Vision. Now, you have to change it on each one, HLG, Dolby Vision, and HDR10. So now I'm going to go open up YouTube. Okay, so now I'm here on YouTube. And I'll show you again, picture settings on the app. Should be on, 34, look at that. I guess YouTube has its own color brightness and picture settings. Alright, so if I play a HDR video, like the one here on the right, give it a few seconds. Remember, the Dolby Vision was set to 45 brightness. Alright, let's go to picture settings. Look at that. Brightness is set to max. And it says HDR on the top right. It's because I'm watching the HDR10 footage. So if I change this to, we'll say, 41, go back, close the video, open up the picture settings. Now it says 34. So you have to change all the color, brightness, contrast, video settings per video content, which is non-HDR, HDR10, Dolby Vision, and HLG. So right now we're in HDMI 2, which is hooked up to my gaming console. And I have the picture settings set to standard, brightness, 35. What I'm going to show you is what that advanced picture settings for watching TV to enable HDMI 2.0 be, and what that does. First of all, it's off right now. I'm going to show you what it reads, the highest video quality that can give me. So you see there very top, if it says color format YUV 420, and it tells you there that you can only play using HDR 4K, which is YUV 422 at 30 Hertz. Non-HDR content will play at 4K 60 Hertz. Now, granted, this video output setting might look a little different on your Xbox or PS5, but it's pretty similar. So again, memorize this and you'll see the difference. What I'll do is go back to this screen and go to the home settings, the TV settings. Actually, you know what? Let me show you a game first, just to prove it to you. So we'll load up a game that plays HDR. Here we go. Let's give it a second. Alright, so if I go to picture settings, you'll see on top right, it'll say HDR is on. So I am playing HDR game content. If you look at the top right, it's playing in 1080p HD with HDR. close that out. We'll turn on the eARC / HDMI 2.0B. So if I go to home settings, watching TV, external inputs, again, this only affects the HDMI inputs, does not affect the internal apps, except for audio. So now enable this and format, go back. Let's go back to the HDMI 2. We'll load up the same game again. Actually, before we do, we'll go to settings, video output settings, and you'll see this has changed. See at top left says color format RGB, and now I can play using HDR 4K at 60 Hz. If it does not say RGB color format at the bottom, you can play HDR 4K 60, then your TV does not have the proper setting on to do so. Just to prove it to you, let's go back, load up the same game. Alright, let's go to the picture settings. You see HDR is still on right there. And if I display the info, right there, it's playing 2160p, 3840, which is 4K with HDR on, only because of that one additional setting which is hidden. Okay, I'll close that out. Now, if you having that setting on, FYI, it affects your audio output from the TV if you're using optical cable output. If you can only use that it's to your receiver or soundbar, then switch back to standard format. Do not use the enhanced ARC unless you want stereo sound coming through your HDMI cable to your ARC receiver or soundbar. Other than that, once you do this, back to standard format, you have to reboot your TV. To do so, just hold the power button. I think about 8 to 9 seconds, and you'll see restart. And that's it. Thank you all.